What if sharing your only meal could change your life forever? This is Amara, a black waitress struggling just to get by. Hungry, tired, and broke. Yet tonight she notices a poor old woman shivering and hungry at the diner. What Amara doesn't know is that this stranger is far from ordinary. And by the end of the night, one small act of kindness will uncover a secret that could change everything. Stay till the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life, heart-touching stories. The city was quiet that night, swallowed by a cold wind that swept through the empty streets. Neon lights flickered over puddles of rainwater, and far away, a lonely diner sign buzzed softly. Open 24 hours. Inside, the smell of coffee and burnt bread hung in the air. Behind the counter stood a young black waitress named Amara, her tired eyes reflecting both strength and exhaustion. Amara had been working at the diner for 3 years. Every night, she served strangers with a smile that hid her pain. Her uniform was old, her shoes worn out, and her pockets nearly empty, but she never let her spirit break. Life hadn't been kind to her, yet she continued to show kindness to others. Her mother was sick back home. Hospital bills piled up faster than she could pay them, and Amara worked extra shifts just to send money back. There were nights she didn't eat, so her mother could. There were mornings when she walked miles to work because she couldn't afford the bus fare. But through it all, she carried hope, fragile but alive. It was nearly midnight when the last customers left. The diner grew quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of rain tapping the window. Amara cleaned tables with slow, heavy movements. Her stomach growled softly. She hadn't eaten all day. From her bag, she pulled out a small lunchbox. Inside was her only meal, a half sandwich and a piece of fruit. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. She was just about to take her first bite when the bell above the door jingled. A gust of cold air followed a frail old woman inside. Her clothes were torn, her shoes nearly falling apart, and her face looked pale and tired. She clutched a small bag close to her chest, shivering as she looked around. Amara hesitated. The diner was closed. Her manager would scold her if he knew she let someone in after hours. But when her eyes met the old woman's, all hesitation disappeared. The woman's eyes were full of hunger and quiet pain, the same kind Amara saw in her own reflection. Without saying a word, Amara guided her to a seat. The old woman sat down slowly, her hands trembling as she tried to warm them by the small heater near the counter. Amara looked at the sandwich in her hand, her only meal, and then at the woman who clearly hadn't eaten in days. For a long moment, she just stood there. She was hungry, weak, and tired. But she remembered something her late grandmother used to say: "The world tests your heart when you have nothing left to give." So, she placed the lunchbox in front of the woman. The old woman's eyes widened. She looked up at Amara, her lips trembling, but Amara only nodded gently, urging her to eat. Slowly, the woman took a bite, then another. Her eyes filled with tears as she finished the sandwich, whispering a quiet, "Thank you." Amara smiled faintly. Her stomach hurt from hunger, but her heart felt full. She didn't need thanks. She just wanted the woman to feel human again. When the old woman stood to leave, she looked at Amara one last time, her gaze deep and lingering, almost as if she wanted to say something important, but she didn't. She simply placed a gentle hand on Amara's arm and walked out into the cold night. Amara stood there for a while, watching the woman disappear into the shadows. She felt an odd calm inside her, a warmth that hunger couldn't take away. That night she locked the diner, wrapped her scarf tightly around her neck, and began her long walk home through the empty streets. Her body was weak, but her heart carried peace. She didn't know it, but her life had already begun to change, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can open doors no one sees coming. The morning sun crept through the cracks of Amara's old apartment window, painting soft golden lines on the wall. The city outside was slowly coming to life, cars honking, children laughing, and street vendors calling out for customers. But inside that small one-room space, silence ruled. Amara sat by the window, sipping a cup of plain water, her substitute for breakfast. Her stomach was empty, but she didn't mind. The image of the old woman eating her sandwich last night replayed in her mind. There was something peaceful about it, something right. Still, the reality of her life pressed down on her shoulders. Her rent was due. Her mother's medical bills were rising again. Her next paycheck was already spent before she'd even earned it. Every corner of her life felt heavy, and yet deep inside, she refused to give up. By 8 a.m., she left for work, wrapping her thin coat tighter against the chill. Her walk to the diner was long, but it gave her time to think. The city didn't care who you were or how kind your heart was. It only rewarded those who didn't quit. When Amara arrived at the diner, she noticed something unusual. Parked outside was a sleek black car, the kind she'd only ever seen in magazines. Its polished surface gleamed beneath the morning light, and a driver in a dark suit stood beside it. Inside, her manager was unusually nervous, pacing near the counter. When he saw her walk in, his tone shifted immediately. "Amara, there you are. A guest has been asking for you." Amara frowned in confusion. "Me?" she thought. She rarely spoke to anyone outside regular customers, and certainly not the kind of people who arrived in expensive cars. She looked toward one of the corner booths, the same one where the old woman had sat the night before. Her heart skipped. Sitting there now was a well-dressed lady, radiant in a cream-colored coat, her silver hair neatly tied back. Her eyes sparkled with a calm familiarity. Amara froze. It couldn't be, but it was. It was the same old woman, except this time she didn't look frail or broken. She looked graceful, confident, and elegant, like someone who belonged in a world far from Amara's. The woman smiled warmly as Amara approached. The manager, not understanding what was going on, stood awkwardly by the counter watching. The woman gestured for Amara to sit, but she hesitated. Instead, she stood still, heart pounding. The woman spoke softly, her voice calm and kind. She thanked Amara for what she did the night before, for feeding her when no one else would. She explained that what Amara didn't know was that she had been testing the kindness of strangers. The night before, she had wandered into the city dressed as a poor, hungry woman, hoping to find just one person who still believed in compassion, not for money, not for attention, but for the simple goodness of the heart, and Amara had been that person. For a moment, Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced. Why would someone do that? Who was this woman? The woman smiled again and introduced herself, Evelyn Moore, wife of one of the most successful businessmen in the country. The black car outside was hers. She explained that she and her husband owned several restaurants, hotels, and charities across the state. And she wanted to personally thank Amara, not just with words, but with something that could truly change her life. Amara stood silent, overwhelmed, unsure if this was real or just a dream she would soon wake from. The woman reached into her purse and handed Amara a small white envelope. Inside was a simple handwritten note and a business card. The note read, "When kindness is given freely, life finds a way to give it back." Below it was an invitation, a meeting at the Moore Foundation, scheduled for the next morning. Amara couldn't believe it. Her hands trembled as she read the words again and again. She looked up, but the woman was already standing to leave. With a kind smile, Evelyn thanked her one last time and said, "See you soon." Then, with the same calm grace she had entered with, she walked out. The diner fell silent once more. The only sound was the faint jingling of the bell as the door closed behind her. Amara stood frozen, the letter still in her hands. The manager stared at her in confusion, demanding to know what just happened, but Amara couldn't speak. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding. For the first time in years, hope felt real, not distant, not imagined, but standing right in front of her that night. As Amara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she whispered a quiet prayer. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, she felt something powerful stirring within her, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, life was finally turning around. And as she drifted into sleep, one thought echoed softly in her heart. Kindness never disappears. It always finds its way home. The next morning arrived with a sky washed in gold and gray. Amara woke up earlier than usual, her heart still racing from the events of the day before. The white envelope lay on her bedside table, the handwriting on it almost glowing in the morning light. She had read the note over and over through the night, trying to make sense of it. It felt unreal, like a story she'd tell herself to escape the pain of her ordinary life. But as the sun crept higher, she realized this was real. The woman she had fed was not a stranger. She was Evelyn Moore, wife of a billionaire, head of a massive charitable foundation, and one of the most respected women in the city. Amara looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her uniform was neatly pressed, but her hand still carried the marks of long nights of cleaning tables and washing dishes. She couldn't afford fancy clothes, yet she wanted to appear presentable. She chose her cleanest outfit, brushed her hair neatly, and whispered to herself, "Just be yourself." The city was alive as she stepped outside. Buses rumbled past, people hurried to work, and vendors shouted their morning calls. Amara walked the same streets she did every day, but today everything felt different, lighter, brighter, almost magical. The note in her hand felt like a promise that something beautiful was waiting ahead. When she arrived at the Moore Foundation, her breath caught in awe. The building was enormous, walls of glass reflecting the morning sun, a large garden filled with flowers, and the name Moore Foundation for Humanity engraved in gold letters across the entrance. She stood outside for a long moment, gripping the invitation tightly. Part of her wanted to turn back. People like her didn't belong in places like this. But another part, the quiet voice that had kept her going through every hardship, whispered, "You belong wherever kindness takes you." So she took a deep breath and walked inside. The lobby was breathtaking. White marble floors, soft music playing in the background, and smiling faces that welcomed her with respect. For once she wasn't invisible. A receptionist looked up and asked her name. When Amara replied, the woman's expression immediately softened into recognition. "Oh, Mrs. Moore has been expecting you," she said warmly. "Please follow me." Amara followed the woman through long hallways filled with photographs, images of children being fed, schools being built, and families being helped by the foundation. Every frame told a story of compassion and second chances. Finally, they stopped at a large oak door. The receptionist knocked gently and opened it. Inside, sunlight poured through wide windows. Evelyn Moore stood by a desk, talking to another woman. She turned the moment Amara entered and smiled, the same warm, genuine smile Amara remembered from the diner. Evelyn walked over and took Amara's hands in hers. There was no judgment in her eyes, no distance, only gratitude. She thanked Amara again for what she had done that night, for feeding a stranger when she herself had nothing. Amara's heart swelled. She didn't know what to say. But Evelyn continued speaking, her voice calm, kind, and filled with purpose. She explained that for years she had been searching for people who lived by kindness, not by greed or recognition. People who gave even when they had little. Her foundation believed that true compassion was the greatest wealth a person could have. Evelyn had seen hundreds of faces, heard thousands of stories, but Amara's simple act of generosity had touched her more deeply than any of them. Then Evelyn did something that left Amara speechless. She handed her a folder. Inside it was a letter of employment, a scholarship form, and a small check. Evelyn explained that the foundation wanted to hire Amara as a community coordinator, someone who would help feed and support families in need. It was a full-time job with a good salary, and the scholarship would help pay for her mother's medical treatment. Amara's hands shook as she looked at the papers. She couldn't hold back her tears. For years she had lived on the edge of survival, and now everything was changing. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said softly, "You gave from your heart when you had nothing. The world needs more hearts like yours." Tears streamed down Amara's face as she nodded. In that moment, the weight of all her struggles lifted. Every night she had cried, every sacrifice she had made, suddenly made sense. Her kindness had finally come full circle. That afternoon, she left the foundation with the job offer clutched tightly in her hand. The city looked different now. Brighter, warmer, full of promise. For the first time in a long time, Amara felt seen, valued, and free. But what she didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. Her story was far from over, because fate had one more surprise waiting for her, something even greater than she could have imagined. The sun peeked through the clouds as Amara walked toward the Moore Foundation once again, but this time she wasn't a visitor. She was part of it. Her heart fluttered with disbelief as she stepped through the glass doors, wearing the foundation's badge that read, Amara Community Outreach Coordinator. It didn't feel real. Just a few days ago, she'd been scraping tips at the diner praying for her mother's medicines. Now she was sitting inside an air-conditioned office surrounded by people who smiled when they saw her. Evelyn Moore herself came to greet her. "I'm so glad you're here," she said warmly. "The world needs people like you, people who understand struggle, yet still choose kindness." Amara smiled, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down." Her first assignment was simple: visit the local shelters and learn about the families they supported. She was given a small team, and together they distributed meals, blankets, and medicines. Amara didn't just do her job, she poured her soul into it. She listened to stories, held trembling hands, and reminded people that hope was still alive. Every evening when she returned home, she would look up at the stars and whisper, "Mama, things are finally changing." But deep down, Amara didn't realize that her kindness was being watched once again. Evelyn was quietly observing her, testing whether her compassion was truly from the heart or born out of reward. Many people changed when fortune found them, but Evelyn wanted to see if Amara's soul would remain the same. 1 week later, the test came. Late one evening, while Amara was leaving work, she noticed a janitor struggling to carry a heavy trash bag down the hall. Without hesitation, she rushed to help him. But then she overheard 2 co-workers whispering nearby, "She's a coordinator now. She shouldn't be doing janitor work." Amara smiled politely and continued helping. "Kindness doesn't come with a title," she said softly. The janitor looked at her with teary eyes and whispered, "Thank you, miss. People usually walk past me like I'm invisible." That moment, small and quiet, said everything about who Amara truly was. The next morning, Evelyn called her into the office. Her voice was calm, but her eyes sparkled with pride. "Amara," she said, "you've passed a test you didn't even know you were taking." Amara looked confused. Evelyn continued, "True character isn't shown when you have nothing. It's shown when you finally have something and still choose kindness." Amara felt her throat tighten as Evelyn handed her another envelope. Inside was a letter of promotion and something else that made her gasp. A key. "To what is this?" Amara asked, her voice trembling. Evelyn smiled. "To your new apartment. You've earned a home, a place of your own. You'll never have to sleep hungry again." Tears streamed down Amara's cheeks. She couldn't believe what was happening. From a girl who had nothing to a woman who had changed lives with her heart. But fate wasn't finished with her yet. Something far bigger was still waiting on the other side of this miracle. Amara stood in her new apartment that evening, her hands trembling as she turned the key and stepped inside. The space was modest, a small kitchen, a single couch, a warm bed, but to her it felt like a palace. For the first time in years, she had a place that was hers. No landlord pounding the door, no hunger waiting in the dark. Just peace. She ran her fingers along the walls and whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you for not letting me give up." On the small wooden table lay a note from Evelyn, the woman who had changed her life. Amara unfolded it slowly, expecting another kind word. But what she read made her heart skip a beat. "There's something you should know, Amara. The woman you helped that night wasn't just anyone. She had been looking for someone like you for a very long time. Tomorrow you'll understand why." Amara barely slept that night. Her mind replayed every moment. The hungry old woman at the diner, her tearful eyes, the way she had smiled before walking away. What could Evelyn possibly mean? The next morning, Amara arrived at the foundation early. Evelyn was waiting for her in the office, a thick folder in her hands. "Amara," she said softly, "sit down. It's time you know the full story." Inside the folder were photos, newspaper clippings, and one old letter, worn out but still readable. Evelyn explained that before becoming the wife of a billionaire, she had run a small community shelter for children, and among them was a bright little girl named Amara Johnson. Amara's breath caught in her chest. "That's my full name," she whispered. Evelyn nodded gently. "You were one of the children we sponsored after your parents lost their jobs. I never forgot your eyes, filled with hope, even when you had nothing. When I saw you at that diner, something told me it was you. But I needed to be sure." Amara's tears fell silently. All those nights of hunger, the endless struggle, it all connected back to that moment. The woman she had fed was the same woman who once helped her survive. Evelyn continued, her voice soft but steady. "You didn't know who I was. You didn't expect anything in return. Yet, you gave everything you had to a stranger. That's why I knew you were still the same girl with the same heart." Amara felt her soul tremble. Life had come full circle, a cycle of kindness, returning years later like a miracle. Evelyn then reached into her drawer and pulled out another envelope. "This," she said, "isn't a gift. It's an opportunity. The foundation will now open a new program, Amara's Table, a meal initiative for struggling families. And I want you to lead it." Amara froze, unable to speak, a project in her name. To feed others, born from the same act that had once saved her. She placed a trembling hand over her heart, whispering, I'll do it. I'll make sure no one sleeps hungry again." As Evelyn hugged her, the world outside seemed brighter. Amara had finally found her purpose, not in riches, not in titles, but in giving back what life had once given her. But little did she know, her story was about to go beyond kindness. It was about to inspire an entire town. News of Amara's Table spread faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the small initiative became the heartbeat of the entire town. Every evening, long lines of hungry people, mothers, children, elders, gathered with hope in their eyes. And every evening, Amara was there, serving meals with her own hands, smiling as if she had never known struggle. People began whispering her name with admiration. The girl who gave away her only meal is now feeding hundreds. The waitress who once had nothing is changing lives. But Amara didn't care for fame. She worked quietly, her heart focused on those plates of food, each one carrying the same love she had once shared with a stranger in need. Soon, reporters arrived, eager to tell her story. Cameras flashed, microphones appeared, but Amara stayed humble. "This isn't about me," she said softly. "It's about proving that one small act of kindness can change everything, even when no one's watching." Then, one morning, the mayor himself visited Amara's Table. He had heard whispers of her work, but seeing it in person moved him deeply. After the meal, he stood before the crowd and said, "Today, we honor a woman who turned struggle into strength and kindness into change. From this day forward, October 12th will be known as Amara Day in our town." Applause erupted. The same people who once laughed at her, those who had mocked the girl who shared her only meal, now stood clapping with tears in their eyes. The mayor handed her a certificate. But what made Amara truly emotional was what followed, the line of children stepping forward, holding handmade cards that read, "Thank you, Miss Amara. Because of you, we never go to bed hungry." She knelt down, hugging them, her heart overflowing. "You don't have to thank me," she whispered. "Just promise me one thing. When you grow up, help someone else too." That evening, Amara stood outside the center as the sun set in shades of gold and crimson. Evelyn joined her, smiling proudly. "You've done it, Amara," she said. "You've changed more lives than you'll ever know." Amara looked at the horizon, tears glimmering in her eyes. "It was never me," she said softly. "It was the kindness that kept moving forward, from you to me, and now to them." The wind brushed her face, carrying the laughter of children from behind her. The same town that once overlooked her now saw her for who she truly was. A light born from struggle, a soul that proved one truth: you don't need wealth to change the world. You just need a kind heart and the courage to share it. As the camera slowly faded out, Amara smiled, standing where it all began, holding a plate of food, a symbol of her journey, her faith, her victory. They laughed when she gave away her only meal. But the next morning, her life completely changed. Never underestimate the power of kindness. It can turn struggles into miracles. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real, heart-touching, and inspirational stories every day.